What do you think about this day? Long time coming.
My mom is Marjorie Jane Burnett Hess Jones as of 5 days ago, I guess.
Okay, well, Heather said probably a year ago or so, I don't really have any hope for Mom ever changing. And I said, I do. It only takes one incident.
She's been divorced for the past 35 years. Was initiated a divorce against my father back in 1979, I believe it was. She's had a pretty rough life on her own.
My dad was shot down when I was 3. And so a 3-year-old doesn't have a whole lot of memory of a healthy mother beyond that. I'm told she was active and involved, and I believe it. She had 5 little kids, I'm sure she was.
She did a lot of cooking for the elders, and she was highly, highly active in the branch there. My dad was the branch president for at least part of that time. And so, super social life involved around the church. So, a whole different person than what Heidi would know her to be, I guess.
So my father was released from prison and returned home in the spring of 1973. It became evident pretty quickly after he got home that he and my mother were not getting along. In my opinion, between the difficulties that my father had in prisoner of war camp and the difficulties my mother was having with depression and being able to function in that way, it created some problems between the two of them. And they ended up having a divorce that was finalized sometime between 1978 and 1979.
I remember before he came home, her expressing a lot of hope and joy at the prospect of being a family again and having her husband home and having a normal life, which never happened.
And so my mother stayed in the house that we had in Bountiful for a short period of time, and then the house was sold and she moved out. She didn't have any means of income that she was trained to do, and so she took jobs babysitting, being a caretaker in homes. Her income was quite minimal, and she moved fairly frequently. In fact, for a number of years, she moved almost yearly. It became kind of a semi-humorous joke among kids that we would prepare every year to move her things.
Well, hurry it up, kid.
You mean hurry the wedding up?
The pictures.
Hurry the wedding up and get everybody out of here?
He's taking movies.
Oh, movies? Oh, no.
So she began to become more depressed, more bedridden. There were times during these years where it was very difficult for her to function at all.
I guess this might be a good indication. I remember coming home from school, and the way our house was situated, the front door, I had to kind of come around the corner. And if she was ever outside gardening, I had a feeling of, whoa, like Mom must feel good. She's outside. She's doing something. That was the exception to the rule. It's really not that different than the babies in the orphanages, that they failure to thrive. That's really kind of what she's been experiencing over her lifetime, is a failure to thrive, not really having a reason.
Struggling to make enough money to keep a roof over her head and pay the rent and food and take care of expenses and things like that. So she's done child care and looked after homes for people, and she's been pretty reclusive and hasn't wanted to get out and do very much.
I think of her as a peaceful person, a person who gets her peace from usually being alone. Not outgoing. I would call her reclusive.
For however many years it's been, 35 years or something since her divorce from my dad, I would just describe it as kind of licking her wounds. Just kind of trying to recover from the emotional drama that it's been to her.
She has a lot of talents that she could use to help other people, but she just hasn't felt up to it, didn't have the energy.
Sad to the point where it seemed to take up a lot of her energy. So very much wanting that connection with another person, but feeling like she got gypped out of it. And now she has that.
Well, my mother's talked about Rollo throughout the years. Occasionally, she would mention him.
From what I know, he was my dad's companion for a little while, which, you know, is pretty ironic in and of itself, right?
She was in the same mission as he was when they were young. So they knew each other there in the mission. My dad was also one of those missionaries, and he was companions with Rollo. So my dad and he were companions. Then they both dated my mom when they got home.
When she came home from her mission, she dated Rollo pretty seriously for a short period of time, and in fact he proposed to her. And what she tells us children is she wasn't quite ready to make that commitment of marriage.
But then my mom was asked to take her younger sister Louise, who, by the way, that's whose cabin they got married at after all this. It's kind of an interesting full circle kind of a thing. Louise was she was pretty young at the time. She was probably 16, 17, I don't know, but she had a boyfriend that her parents were trying to keep her away from, which that really didn't work, by the way. She ended up marrying him anyway, right? So they asked my mom to take her, I think, back to see a sister that lived, you know, in the Midwest somewhere. So my mom took her.
I think my mom had always just wondered where that relationship would have gone if she hadn't left.
And she ended up going a different direction and marrying my father.
When my mom was having a lot of troubles, I think she was still married to my dad. I don't know who contacted who, but my mom and Rollo had gone to dinner or something while they were still both married to other people, but I think they were both having troubles in their lives and were still friendly toward each other, and that had meant a lot to both of them.
2 years ago or something like that, his name is Rollo. His wife died after a lingering illness, and she decided to, with a little urging, to go look him up and see if he'd be interested in going out to lunch or something like that.
Well, prior to 6 months ago, I could not imagine my mother marrying, let alone dating anybody.
She and I had a conversation. I think it was a year and a half later after, because I'm not sure if she died a year ago or 2 years ago, August. But, you know, she had liked him and would have liked to have gotten together with him. And so I said, well, you know, why don't you let him know? And so she wrote to him, and then they got together. I mean, you've heard the story about the letter that she wrote to him about meeting me at the Cracker Barrel at 3 o'clock, not knowing if he was going to show up or not. And, you know, just kind of taking a chance, like actually asking for what she wanted. It's like it paid off.
As soon as I learned about the fact that she was seeing him, She made it very clear that this was just a very casual relationship and nothing would come from it. And then about a month later, the information we were getting from her was that they're a little bit more serious, but they're going to take things really, really slow. And about a month later, we got the engagement notice.
The change in her voice was so marked. You know, even now, it's like a bit of a schoolgirl. And just talking with this lilt and talking a lot, like nonstop about all these good things that were happening to her. It's like, what have you done with my mom?
Okay, well, the change has been amazing because, first of all, she's had so much energy to do things. So when she would call me on the phone to tell me about, you know, what she's been doing the last few days, it was remarkable to me that she could do things with Rollo day after day, back-to-back days, instead of one thing and recover for a week.
I have seen a light and a happiness come into my mom's life that I didn't think I'd ever see again.
While they were dating, I've learned that my mother has driven a four-wheeler. She's been out camping overnight in a camper. Never thought that I would ever see her do that. Never could imagine her being on a four-wheeler, let alone driving one.
I have a lot of admiration for Rollo, that he is able to see my mom differently, quite honestly, than she sees herself, and really, quite frankly, how we see her.
So she's 85, lives a very quiet life, and tries her best to show love to her family, but in a very kind of quiet way. And I guess I feel like God's hand has kind of been in it, kind of knowing this has been the wish of her heart for so long.
Yeah, not just a guy, but the guy that she wanted. That's pretty cool.
Marjorie Hess, do you take Rollo Sheldon Jones as your lawfully wedded husband, and do you, of your own free will and choice, covenant as his companion and lawfully wedded wife, that you will cleave unto him and none else, that you will observe all the laws, the covenants, and obligations pertaining to the holy state of matrimony, and that you will love, honor, and cherish him as long as you both shall live?
Yes. Yahoo!
And I'm saying, Mom, are you nervous? Nope. And I believed her, you know. I mean, it was evident. Like, I was asking her because I couldn't see any of it, so was she hiding it underneath? But I think she was really genuinely serene.
I'm just pleasantly surprised that something like this would take place at 85 years of age, and that she's healthy enough to enjoy it.
Seeing her so happy has made me feel so happy.
And just the love that God has for each of his children, him wanting her to have that happiness that she's been yearning for.
We have a few refreshments. It's wonderful to see you all here. I think of the love that's in this room, starting with my husband. I haven't used that word for a long time. I'll get used to it. And thank you all for coming.